It was a regular Tuesday afternoon at Maple Grove Plaza, a shopping center, bustling with families, teenagers, and elderly patrons. The sun poured through the wide glass windows of Greenleaf Market, painting the aisles in warm golden light. Mildred Thompson, a petite black woman in her late 70s, shuffled slowly down the produce aisle, her walker clicking against the polished floor. She was a familiar face at Greenleaf, having shopped there for decades, and everyone knew Mildred for her sharp wit, gentle smile, and unwavering pride. That day, however, tension hung in the air. Mildred had noticed a mix-up with her coupon on her last visit, something she had politely raised with the customer service desk. She had expected the matter to be resolved, but apparently the store's management had grown impatient with her. As she reached the end of the aisle, she accidentally knocked over a display of oranges. They tumbled to the floor with a loud crash, rolling in every direction. Mildred froze, mortified, bending slowly to pick up the scattered fruit. That's when Jeremy Marks, the store manager, appeared. He was a tall, broad man in his 40s, with an air of entitlement, wearing a pressed shirt with the Greenleaf logo. Instead of offering assistance, Jeremy's face twisted into anger. "Watch where you're going," he barked, his voice reverberating across the aisle. Mildred, startled, looked up at him with her wide, calm eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her hands trembling as she tried to gather the oranges. Jeremy stepped closer, looming over her. "I said move. You're causing a scene," he shouted, his finger jabbing at her chest. Mildred's hands shook violently, not from fear alone, but from the shock of such hostility. Other shoppers watched in uncomfortable silence, some whispering, others frozen, unsure whether to intervene. Then it happened. Without warning, Jeremy slapped her across the cheek. The sound was sickeningly loud, echoing in the aisle. Mildred stumbled back, tears immediately welling in her eyes. The pain was sharp, but the humiliation cut deeper. The store fell silent, the entire room holding its breath. Jeremy's expression was one of fury, but to the onlookers it was clear he had crossed a line that could never be erased. Mildred straightened herself slowly, placing a hand over her reddened cheek. Her voice, though trembling, carried a steel-like firmness. "You do not treat people this way," she said, her eyes locking onto Jeremy's with an intensity that silenced even the murmurs of shocked shoppers. "I've spent my whole life working, giving back, raising my family, and paying for this community to thrive, and you will not shame me in my own space." Jeremy laughed dismissively. "Or what? You're old. You can't do anything about it," he sneered. That was the final straw. Mildred's fingers tightened around her walker. Her mind raced. She had spent years quietly enduring injustices. But this moment, this blatant act of disrespect was different. Something inside her snapped, not with anger that sought vengeance, but with a clarity of purpose that radiated from her every movement. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of the nearby shoppers. Many looked away, unwilling to get involved. Some whispered, "She can't do anything about it." But Mildred knew something they didn't. She had planned for moments like this for years. She wasn't wealthy, but she was shrewd, connected, and remarkably strategic. For decades, she had built a small empire of investments and community influence, quietly advocating for justice in her own understated way. Jeremy's actions would not go unanswered. Not today. "Jeremy Marks," she said, her voice now calm but carrying undeniable authority. "I want to see the person in charge of this store right now, or you will regret it." Jeremy's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "Fine," he muttered, retreating to the back office to make a call. But Mildred didn't flinch. She straightened, wiped her tears, and continued picking up the oranges with deliberate care, her eyes unwavering. She wasn't just an elderly woman being slapped in a grocery store. She was a force that would make sure justice was seen by everyone, and it would be swift. Mildred waited calmly near the front of the store, the clatter of shopping carts and murmurs of onlookers fading into the background. She had called ahead before coming to Greenleaf that morning, under the guise of routine business inquiries. But today, every call, every note she had left with her contacts, every email quietly flagged in the system, would come into play. Within minutes, the regional director of Greenleaf Market, a sharp woman named Karen Delgado, arrived. Her presence was immediately commanding, her heels clicking against the floor, eyes scanning the aisle like a hawk. Mildred met her gaze without hesitation, holding up her hand slightly to indicate the manager. "This man," Mildred said, her voice steady, "just slapped me in your store. He humiliated me in front of everyone, and I demand accountability." Karen Delgado frowned, her expression hardening as she glanced at Jeremy Marks. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice professional but icy. Jeremy's bravado faltered as the weight of the moment hit him. "It was a misunderstanding," he stammered, unable to maintain his usual arrogance. Mildred shook her head slowly. "No misunderstanding can justify violence against an elderly woman. I want every security camera reviewed. I want to see the code of conduct enforced. And I want the management team here held responsible for this toxic environment." Karen Delgado's lips pressed into a thin line. She gestured for Jeremy and his assistant managers to follow her to the back office. Mildred followed calmly, as if she were walking into her own home. Once inside, the tension was palpable. Jeremy tried to speak, but Karen raised a hand, silencing him. "Explain this to me," she demanded. Mildred didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her small leather bag and pulled out a stack of papers. Documents, emails, internal reports that she had gathered quietly over the years. Every complaint from employees, every note about mismanagement, every overlooked incident was there, organized meticulously. She laid them on the table. "I've kept records," she said, looking directly at Jeremy, "of every complaint, every violation, and every instance of abuse by this management team. You thought no one noticed, that an elderly woman could be ignored and belittled. But today you will see that your actions have consequences." Karen Delgado leaned back in her chair, scanning the documents. Her expression shifted from skeptical to shocked as she read the reports. These are serious allegations," she said slowly. "And now, combined with today's incident, we have a clear violation of company policy. I need to take immediate action." Jeremy opened his mouth to protest, but Mildred held up a hand. "There's no need. I'm not here to debate. I'm here to ensure justice, and justice in this case requires accountability." At that moment, the assistant managers, 3 of them, looked at each other nervously. They had known Jeremy's behavior was aggressive, but they had never imagined it escalating to physical violence. Now their own jobs were on the line. Karen Delgado picked up the phone, her eyes still on the documents. She spoke firmly to someone on the other line, giving clear instructions. Within minutes, security personnel began escorting Jeremy and the assistant managers from the store. The employees behind the counters and in the aisles watched in stunned silence. Many of them whispered to one another, astonished that an elderly woman had orchestrated this outcome with such precision and authority. Mildred walked calmly to the front of the store. She paused for a moment, looking out at the other shoppers. "I hope everyone here sees," she said, her voice rising slightly so it carried across the room, "that no matter your age, no matter your size, no matter what society expects you to tolerate, you have the power to stand up for yourself. You have the power to demand respect." At that moment, a young cashier, barely 17, approached her timidly. "Ma'am," he whispered, "how did you know what to do? I mean, how did you have all this prepared?" Mildred smiled faintly, her eyes glinting with quiet pride. "I've spent my life paying attention," she said. "Watching, learning, noting injustices. You never know when you might need to act. The question is, would you have the courage to do the same if it happened to you?" The cashier nodded, clearly moved, and Mildred continued her walk toward the exit, her walker clicking steadily against the floor. The store behind her was silent, emptied of the management team that had so long ruled with arrogance and intimidation. What had started as a shocking act of violence against an elderly woman had ended with a decisive reversal of power, a lesson that would echo through the aisles for years to come. As she stepped outside, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot, Mildred paused to catch her breath. She looked at the sky, a mix of gold and orange, and felt the weight of what had just occurred settle over her. Today had not just been about holding others accountable. It had been about reclaiming dignity, proving that strength and courage do not diminish with age. And yet, as she slowly wheeled herself toward her car, a thought lingered in her mind. She had won this battle, but the real challenge was changing the system itself, ensuring that no one else, no elderly woman, no shy teenager, no timid employee, would ever have to endure what she had faced today. News of what had happened at Greenleaf Market spread faster than anyone could have expected. Within hours, videos from the security cameras showing Jeremy Marks slapping Mildred had surfaced online. Social media erupted with outrage, comments flooding in from every corner of the country. People were shocked, horrified, and inspired all at once. The hashtag #JusticeForMildred began trending, and soon local news channels were broadcasting clips of the incident, replaying the moment that had left so many in disbelief. Inside the store, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Employees who had previously felt powerless now whispered among themselves with a new sense of empowerment. Some had already faced harassment from management, but felt they had no way to fight back. Seeing Mildred stand her ground, organize her evidence, and directly influence the removal of an entire management team ignited something inside them. Meanwhile, Mildred returned home exhausted but determined. Her small apartment was tidy, filled with memories of a life lived fully despite obstacles. Family photos lined the walls, showing grandchildren she adored and friends she had supported over the years. As she sank into her chair, she thought about the broader implications of her actions. This wasn't just about one man's cruelty. It was about the culture of silence and fear that allowed abuse to persist unchecked. The next morning, she received dozens of calls and messages from community leaders, civil rights organizations, and even former employees of Greenleaf. People wanted to support her, to make sure the store took permanent measures to prevent such incidents in the future. Some offered legal advice, others offered public platforms to share her story. One call, however, stood out. It was from a local journalist, Marissa Clark, who had covered Mildred's neighborhood for years. "Ms. Thompson," Marissa said warmly, "I've covered a lot of stories, but nothing like this. Your courage has changed so many lives already. Would you agree to an interview?" Mildred hesitated only for a moment. "Yes," she said firmly, "but I want to make one thing clear.
This isn't about me being a hero.
It's about showing people that they can demand respect, that they can act when something is wrong." The interview aired later that week, reaching hundreds of thousands of viewers. In it, Mildred spoke calmly, deliberately, about the importance of standing up for oneself, about dignity, and about the responsibility each person has to confront injustice. Viewers across the country responded with admiration, tears, and messages, sharing their own experiences of mistreatment. The story became more than a viral moment. It became a movement. Back at Greenleaf, the corporate office responded quickly. They instituted mandatory training sessions for all employees, emphasizing respect, empathy, and proper conflict resolution. The ousted management team faced not just termination, but public scrutiny and formal investigations for workplace misconduct. Jeremy Marks, once confident in his unchecked authority, found himself facing lawsuits, public criticism, and a reputation permanently tarnished. Despite the chaos surrounding her, Mildred remained grounded. She continued her daily routine, visiting the grocery store, not the Greenleaf Market where the incident occurred, but a nearby one where she was warmly welcomed. She shopped slowly, enjoying the simple rhythms of life, yet she carried with her the awareness that her actions had ignited change. One afternoon, as she selected vegetables for her dinner, a young woman approached her hesitantly. "Miss Thompson," she said, her voice trembling slightly, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm a cashier, and I've faced so much bullying at work. Watching what you did, it gave me hope that I can stand up too." Mildred's eyes softened, and she placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "Courage isn't about never being afraid," she said. "It's about acting even when you are. Always remember that." As Mildred left the store, pushing her walker steadily across the parking lot, she noticed the sunlight filtering through the trees. The world felt a little brighter, a little more just. But she also knew that her fight wasn't over. Real change required vigilance, persistence, and continued courage. And somewhere deep in her mind, she wondered, how many more people would find the strength to act if they saw what one elderly woman could accomplish? Could her actions inspire a movement that would prevent others from enduring the humiliation she had faced? Or was this just a fleeting moment in a world too often blind to injustice? Even as the news coverage and social media praise poured in, Mildred's life became more complicated. Not everyone celebrated her actions. While the public lauded her courage, There were individuals who resented the upheaval she caused. Former Greenleaf employees who had previously supported the ousted management faced backlash. Co-workers who had stayed quiet now whispered about Mildred's interference, and online trolls attacked her relentlessly, questioning her motives and even her character. Mildred had expected some resistance. She had lived long enough to know that standing up for justice always drew a mix of admiration and criticism, but the intensity of it still took a toll. Her phone rang constantly, messages stacked up and emails flooded her inbox. For a woman who had always valued peace and routine, the sudden exposure felt overwhelming. One morning, as she sat at her kitchen table sipping tea, her grandson Marcus walked in. He was in his mid-20s, tall and kind-eyed, always protective of his grandmother. He looked at her worriedly. "Grandma, you're everywhere on the news. People are talking about you non-stop. Are you okay?" Mildred smiled faintly, though a hint of fatigue showed in her eyes. "I'm fine, Marcus, but this isn't just about me. It's bigger than my personal comfort. It's about showing people they don't have to accept disrespect or abuse." Marcus frowned, his hands clenching slightly. "I know, Grandma, but some people are saying terrible things online. They're attacking you, and I'm worried they might try to escalate things at the store or even here at home." Mildred reached out, placing a hand on his. "I've faced worse in my life, Marcus. You learn to see the difference between noise and danger." "The noise you ignore, the danger you prepare for." And prepare she did. Mildred had already contacted a local attorney, ensuring that any threats or harassment would be handled legally. She strengthened the security around her home discreetly, installed cameras, and even coordinated with neighborhood watch volunteers. While she hadn't sought fame or recognition, she understood the power of influence came with responsibility, and sometimes risk. But amidst the challenges, there were moments of profound emotional reward. Letters arrived from young people who had witnessed the incident online. One teen wrote, "I've been bullied at school and never spoke up. Seeing you stand up for yourself made me realize I can defend myself too. Thank you." Another, from a middle-aged store clerk, said, "I've endured years of toxic management, but after watching what you did, I finally feel like I can speak out without fear." Mildred kept these letters close, reading them each night before bed. They reminded her that courage could ripple outward, inspiring others to act. And yet the strain was undeniable. She felt exhaustion in her bones, a deep weariness that came not from physical labor, but from navigating the emotional storm her actions had unleashed. Then came an unexpected challenge. One morning, the regional office called. They wanted Mildred to meet with them again, but this time it was not to thank her. It was a meeting to discuss potential corporate backlash. Some board members worried that the viral incident had made Greenleaf appear weak or mismanaged. They suggested that while Jeremy Marks and his team had been removed, Mildred's public influence might need to be curtailed to protect the company's image. Mildred's jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" she asked. "I was assaulted in your store. I demanded accountability. Are you telling me the company wants me to be quiet?" The voice on the other end hesitated. We just want to ensure this doesn't escalate further." It's complicated. Mildred knew the true challenge now, balancing her personal victory with the responsibility to ensure long-term change. She could not allow corporate fear or ego to undo what had been achieved. She drafted a response, firm yet strategic, asserting that she would continue to speak out and work with employees to ensure respectful workplace practices. She would not be silenced. That night, as she reflected on the events, she realized something important. Courage was never a one-time act. It was a continuous effort, a series of choices made every day in the face of fear, fatigue, and resistance. And while the world had celebrated her initially, the real test was sustaining that change in the face of opposition. Before going to bed, Mildred placed a small photograph on her bedside table, an old black-and-white image of her mother, a woman who had taught her the value of dignity and self-respect. She whispered softly, "I hope I'm making you proud, Mom. I hope this ripple lasts longer than just today." As sleep overtook her, a quiet determination settled in her chest. The battles ahead might be harder, more subtle and perhaps invisible to the public eye. But Mildred knew she had the resilience, wisdom, and courage to face them. The fire that had been ignited in that store aisle would not fade. It would continue to burn, lighting the path for others who needed the courage to stand. The following week, Greenleaf Market and Mildred's story became a national sensation. News outlets, morning shows, and online platforms featured her interview, replaying the moment she had stood up to Jeremy Marks. People everywhere admired the poise and intelligence of an elderly woman who refused to be humiliated. But the story didn't stop at admiration. It sparked conversations about workplace abuse, respect for the elderly, and corporate accountability. Mildred had been invited to speak at local town halls, community centers, and even corporate training seminars. Each time she walked in with her walker, her back straight, her eyes calm yet sharp. She shared the story of the slap, the management's arrogance, and the careful plan she executed to ensure justice. People listened intently, their expressions shifting from shock to inspiration. Many admitted they had remained silent in similar situations, unsure how to respond or fearing retaliation. One evening, during a live televised town hall, a young woman in the audience asked, her voice trembling, "Mildred, I work in retail, and my manager treats me like I'm invisible. How did you find the courage to confront them?" Mildred paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "Courage," she said slowly, "isn't about being fearless. It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to let anyone take it from you. You prepare, you plan, and you act with clarity. And sometimes, you allow your actions to speak louder than words. If I could do it, so can you. The question is, will you?" Her words sent ripples through the audience. Cameras captured tears in the eyes of employees who had endured silent abuse for years. Social media amplified the moment, hashtags trending worldwide as people shared their own stories, pledging to stand up against injustice. Back at Greenleaf, the aftermath of the incident continued to unfold. Jeremy Marks faced multiple lawsuits, and investigations revealed a pattern of misconduct beyond what Mildred had documented. Corporate leadership acknowledged that systemic issues existed and pledged reforms, including transparent reporting systems, stricter hiring protocols, and mandatory employee rights training. Meanwhile, Mildred continued her quiet personal advocacy. She met with former employees who had suffered under Jeremy and his team, helping them navigate compensation claims and workplace protections. She connected with local organizations, mentoring young women and men on standing up for themselves, while maintaining dignity and strategic intelligence. Every small success felt like a victory, a continuation of the triumph she had achieved in the store aisle. Yet, the emotional core of the story remained the same: the slap itself. Every time she spoke publicly, she recounted that moment, not for sensationalism, but to illustrate the raw reality of disrespect and the power of response. "It's not about revenge," she told audiences. "It's about reclaiming your voice, your dignity, and making sure injustice cannot thrive unchecked." One afternoon, Mildred received a letter from a national organization advocating for elder rights. They invited her to become an honorary ambassador, recognizing her courage in standing against physical and emotional abuse. As she read the letter, she felt a deep satisfaction, not from accolades, but from knowing that her actions had inspired concrete change and awareness. That night, as she prepared dinner, she reflected on the weeks that had passed. The adrenaline of confrontation, the exhaustion of public attention, the emotional highs and lows, they had all been worth it. For every online troll or skeptical voice, there were hundreds of individuals inspired to act, to challenge abuse, and to reclaim dignity in their own lives. Mildred looked at herself in the kitchen mirror, gently touching the still faint red mark on her cheek. The physical pain had healed, but the emotional and social impact of the event had changed her life permanently. And she realized something vital. True power did not come from anger or retaliation. It came from calm, calculated action, from knowledge and from the courage to act at the right moment. As she turned off the lights and prepared for bed, she felt a quiet sense of completeness. Her mission was far from over. There were still people to help, injustices to confront. But she had proven to the world and to herself that one person could make a difference. One elderly woman, underestimated by those around her, had transformed humiliation into empowerment, weakness into undeniable strength, and injustice into a lesson for everyone who witnessed it. Months had passed since the incident at Greenleaf Market, but its impact continued to ripple through Mildred Thompson's life and the community. The store had been completely restructured under new management, with strict oversight and policies emphasizing respect, safety, and dignity for both employees and customers. Employees reported a healthier workplace environment, and the fear that had once lingered in the aisles was replaced with confidence and pride. Mildred, however, had returned to her quiet routines. She still shopped at her local store, enjoying the simple pleasures of selecting fresh vegetables, chatting with familiar cashiers, and watching families pass by. Yet, there was a subtle change in the way people interacted with her. Strangers greeted her with nods and smiles. Colleagues who had once been timid now approached her for advice, and young people who had been inspired by her actions continued to write letters and messages of gratitude. One afternoon, Marcus, her grandson, joined her for a walk in the park. He looked at her thoughtfully. "Grandma, people everywhere are still talking about you. You've changed lives. Do you ever feel overwhelmed by it all?" Mildred smiled gently, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of wisdom. "I do sometimes," she admitted, "but this isn't about me. It's about showing people that courage is possible at any age, that dignity can be reclaimed, and that standing up for what's right is never wasted. Every action, no matter how small, creates ripples." As they walked, they noticed a small group of high school students nearby, carrying posters that read, "Stand up for respect and no more silence." Mildred realized that her actions had inspired initiatives even among the youngest members of her community, a legacy she had never anticipated. The thought filled her with quiet pride. Back at home, she received an invitation from a national advocacy group to speak at a conference on elder rights and workplace dignity. She accepted, knowing that sharing her story could empower countless others. Mildred spent hours preparing, carefully reflecting on the lessons learned from her experience: patience, strategy, courage, and the unwavering belief that respect must be demanded, not merely hoped for. During her speech, she recounted the day Jeremy Marks had slapped her, the meticulous plan she had executed, and the resulting transformation within Greenleaf Market. Tears glistened in the eyes of attendees as she spoke about fear, resilience, and the importance of standing up, even when the world underestimates you. At the conclusion of her talk, a young woman approached, her voice trembling. "I was too scared to confront my manager before, but now I will. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Mildred hugged her gently. "Courage is contagious," she whispered. "It spreads not through force, but through example." That evening, as she returned home, she sat in her favorite chair by the window, looking out at the neighborhood she had called home for decades. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the rooftops. Mildred reflected on her journey, the fear she had felt, the humiliation she had endured, and the ultimate empowerment she had created, not just for herself, but for countless others. She thought of the lesson she had imparted to Marcus, and now to the larger world. One person, no matter their age, stature, or background, has the power to confront injustice, demand accountability, and inspire a wave of change. And while life would continue with its challenges, Mildred knew that the courage she had shown that fateful afternoon would live on in the hearts of those who witnessed it. Before going to bed, she touched the photograph of her late mother on the bedside table, whispering softly, "I hope I've honored your strength, Mum. I hope the ripples I've created today will become waves that never fade." As she closed her eyes, a sense of peace and fulfillment settled over her. The slap that had once been a moment of pain and humiliation had transformed into a catalyst for justice, empowerment, and enduring legacy. Mildred Thompson, the woman who had refused to be silenced, had proven that true courage can change the world, one decisive act at a time.